Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, I am Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport. We can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for the Hard Compound on any of those platforms and come and give us a follow. We normally put out 3 written articles a day, excuse me, in the morning, early afternoon, and in the evening here in the UK. And these race reviews, race previews, throwbacks, birthdays, breaking news, and any of our favourite cars and bikes that we like to share with you all, just to share a love of motorsport that we all have. As I said, we cover everything from F1 to IndyCar, sports cars, Tour Rally, and everything in between, if there is such a thing. So if you like the sound of that, do come and give us a follow. In case you hadn't spotted, we also do live video interviews, just like this one. And just like this one, these are broadcast on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our YouTube. They're also saved automatically in the video section on Facebook and in the live section on our YouTube. We've done well over 100 of these, and we've had some fantastic guests. I'm not going to name them all, but from a vast spectrum across the motorsport world, from the British Touring Car Championship, some of the current grid, and some legends of that series, guys like Rob Gravitt and Frank Sitton, Steve Soper, guys like that. We've also had people who have raced in Formula One, sports cars, IndyCar, the likes of Stefan Johansson, David Brabham, Ari Leyendijk, Danny Sullivan, Willie T. Ribbs, Brian Herter, Roberto Guerrero, Tommy Byrne, Emanuele Pirro, Will Power, Alonso Jr., Alex Palou, Derek Warwick, Mark Blundell, Eddie Cheever, many others. So do go and check those out in the video section and in the live section on YouTube. But don't do it just yet, because we have a fantastic live guest joining us very shortly. I mentioned people that have driven F1 machinery and sports cars and IndyCar, and tonight's guest, despite being quite a bit younger than me, has done all of that already. So we're going to bring him in right now, one of the very best racing drivers to have come out of the UK in the last 10 years. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Mr. Callum Ilott.
How are we doing?
He is. Callum, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Just had dinner, so yeah, ready to go.
Excellent. Full of food and ready to talk motorsport and stuff, which is good. No, great stuff. Well, glad all is well. Firstly, thank you very much for coming on and having a chat this evening. I'm trying to contact for a while, so it was good to see you at Autosport, and thank you for the chat. It was great speaking with you there as well.
I think made it a lot easier to get into contact, that's for sure. It's good, those kind of events. I haven't been in a while, so.
Yeah, and it was a good one, wasn't it? I mean, people have given it a bit of negative press, but I thought it was excellent. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's a cool event to go to, and especially when I was younger, to kind of get me into the different environments that there are in motorsports. I think for everyone, there's something to see that you can entice you into an area, and I enjoy that. I enjoy exploring and seeing the little worlds that I'd never seen before.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, you kind of head towards something, and then something else catches your eye, and you find yourself flitting off to that, and you end up going to where you were going about half an hour later, which was great. But yeah, it was good to grab you at the side of the main stage there and have a chat. So that was all good. Excuse me. Just before we get cracking, hello to everyone who's already in the comments, Craig and Russell and Dan and Kev and all the others who have commented. If you've got any questions or comments, pop them in there and we'll work them in as we go. But we've got a lot to get through. You've done a lot in a short space of time. And I guess the best place to start is right at the very start. I mean, where did the interest in fast, noisy things come from?
I didn't really have a massive interest in fast, noisy race cars. I always loved cars when I was younger, but the race cars didn't come until, well, once I got into karting and kind of understood the world. But for me, the bit that got me after doing a go-karting party locally at Rye House, which is where I started, was how fast and low and the feelings you'd get from driving something like that and doing it at 7 years old, comparing that to playing rugby or going swimming or something, it's just nothing compared to it, and that's what hooked me. So I kind of just developed a love for the feeling, the driving, the kind of flow of that well, the go-kart. And then I would say it took another 2 years to kind of get into the competition side of it, because when you're learning, of course you're racing with people who are at a similar age. Some were a bit older and quite a bit more experienced, but I didn't take to it straight away in the speed side of things. And then, yeah, I'd say after 2 years, I started to get some results, win a couple of things, and that's when the competition stuff starts. And you build competition with the love for the individual sport, and that's when I guess it takes off.
Yeah, and I guess the results, even at a young age when you're not particularly doing it for the results, when they do come, you start thinking, "Oh, I like this." It's kind of a good feeling, isn't it? And you can, and it and the bug bites a bit harder. Um, Question that I always like to ask is, did your parents take it much persuading? Because some people have come from a motor racing background. Yeah, I mentioned Alonso Jr. It was obviously was always going to get into motorsport given his father. But then you had Rick Parfitt Jr., who's raced in BTCC and GT racing, and he got into it racing lawnmowers against the members of Queen, as you do. Just wondering, I mean, was there any what's the word? Any hesitancy from your parents when you said you wanted to really go racing and go into competitions? Were they concerned for your safety or anything like that?
No, they weren't ever really concerned. My dad definitely not. My mum, I think for a while in karting, and then that settled down, and then for a while in cars. Um, there was obviously a bit of a kind of motherly instinct, safety kind of thing, but without any control over it other than wanting to be there and see it.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, the persuasion side of things, no, I think it was very mutual. Like my dad loved it through me, and obviously gave me the access to be able to pursue it. And I definitely showed a higher interest in motorsport than I did anything else that I'd tried when I was younger. So my parents had always been very open of making me try stuff, even whether it's food or sports. You've got to try it all and see what you like, and then that way later in life what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And same approach with sports. I tried a lot, um, which I think is definitely a good thing when you're young, but I took to this and stuck with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, when your kid loves something, it's like natural that you want to encourage it, even if there is something in the back of your mind saying, not sure. But obviously, you went down that route and it's worked out pretty well. Just want to run through your kind of sort of understatement. Just want to run through your karting really, because you said you got into competition, I guess, what age of 9, 10, 11, that kind of a time.
I think
Um,
started the races at 8, yeah.
and I mean, obviously, karting is a great proving ground. There's so many racers now and from the past that have gone through the karting side of things. I've just got here. Was it 2011? You got your first win in the KF3 Formula Kart Stars. I mean, apparently that's what I found from various researches. But whenever that first win came, did it, in a proper competition? That must have felt really good. That must have given you a shot in the arm.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I don't know if I won some individual races before that, but I think that was the first kind of championship win I had.
Yeah,
And it was a small grid, but it was a strong competition, some good drivers in it. And I think that was kind of one of the stepping stones of going like, okay, yeah, I like this, all these names of I was always kind of one of the younger ones racing against the older guys. And these were people you kind of looked up to or watched going on track and tried to learn a bit from, and then you're racing them and you finally beat them. I think for your kind of subconscious, it's very good to take that as a motivation and build you for the future. I think at the time I just go, oh, this is great, I beat them, cool, next thing. But afterwards, I think there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, obviously spark something. And again, I've got here that he took third in the German championship, obviously going overseas and racing out there. I mean, I spoke with Terry Fullerton, who obviously is the kart guy on here, and he said that going overseas, the first time he raced overseas, it was a real eye opener, but it was the best thing he did because it was a different style of circuit, a different style of racing, and I guess you found the same thing.
Yeah, I was advised, well, actually, through most of my karting career from 2010 onwards, from Oliver Oakes, who owns and runs High Tech, and he made it very clear that Europe was the way to go in karting, and you kind of just need to leave the UK side of karting alone and go over there. That's where it's looked at. That's where the best racing is, and whether it's right or wrong, that's what I did, and I just stuck to racing from there in Europe and doing European Championship, WSKs, which were also kind of, well, all the same drivers, just a different unofficiated FIA Championship kind of thing, and won a lot of things, and yeah, that took the eye of a couple of people, which is important to you. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's good to get noticed, but it doesn't make as much of a difference in some aspects as you'd expect at that age. But definitely, some people noticed me and took an eye out for me, and that helped.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just got here towards the end of your time in the karting world. You moved to the Zanardi Straka team. Obviously, the name Zanardi, we all know. Yeah, Alex Zanardi, we know what happened to him and everything like that. And I just think a name like that, even like within karting, I mean, that holds a bit of weight, doesn't it? And I guess if you can get on board, it's gonna maybe put you in the shop window a bit more alongside your results as well.
Yeah, I mean, everything involved with that. So Zanardi had a factory team called Chiesa Corsa, which is run by a guy called Dino Chiesa, who basically, I would say, honed Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton in the same team at the same time before jumping into cars. And he's still there, still doing it. The team and the kart and everything that they run now is called Kart Republic. And a couple of years before me, or I think his last year was 2011, but Nick de Vries had just won all the karting championships with them in the previous years, and I'd kind of followed into that. I'd always been like affiliated with him, but I'd been doing it sometimes my own way to do the German championships and stuff. So my own little setup. And Straka were coming in. They were running in LMP2 at the time, growing on that side. I think they'd just come off of a few Le Mans podiums and WEC results. And they had a World Series by Renault 3.5 team. And they started to support karting, and I was one of the drivers. So yeah, it was an interesting thing. Actually, I did my first test in cars with them in a Formula Renault 2 litre. So yeah, the whole setup kind of set me up nicely to learn a bit more.
Yeah, it sounds like there are some very, very good people involved. Obviously knowing what they were doing further up the ladder as well. Just want to say hello to Indira Flack, who's tuned in. Hello, Indira. We've got to say a big thank you to Indira because she basically got us talking properly at the Autosport show, and she's got she is in charge of the GBRD, the Great British Racing Drivers photo exhibition and book, which is fantastic. And Callum is in there.
I'm in page 80 somewhere.
I thought it was page 84. Was that Malcolm? I can't remember. But it isn't
87, one of them.
But it isn't in talent order. It's fine. So yeah, do go and check out GBRD and check out Indira. She's she does great stuff and she's lovely. We love her. So yeah, hello. So obviously you won some championships. Was it the WSK Final Cup in 2014, things like that, and your mind is obviously wandering to cars with who's involved with Straka and everything else like that. Did you have any? Did you have multiple options that you were thinking of which route you wanted to go down at that stage, or was it just a case of getting into a car?
I think the original plan was for me to do Formula Renault 2 liter,
Hmm.
and do, I don't know, Euro Cup, or I think it was NEC at the time, and see where I kind of go from that. And then I had a meeting with Helmut Marko in Silverstone,
Mm.
and it was pretty clear that I could go to Formula 3 with Carlin, go straight there, like Max had kind of done before, except the difference was hadn't exactly prepared for that. So I think he'd done quite a few more test days than compared to mine, at that level. But I came in and, did a decent job in the grid that there was. But yeah, the original plan wasn't to step straight away there, which you never know, could be a blessing or a curse, but it hasn't proved too bad so far.
Well, yes. I mean, they've done rather well. And Indra has just said it was page 84, and she had to check. So there you go. Page 84. Get it on there. And some copies are signed, so get one of those. So obviously you got the option to go to F3, but you ended up. I say ended up. It makes it sound negative, which obviously it wasn't. You ended up on the other side of the world. You raced out down in New Zealand.
Yes.
That must have been a pretty big move, because at this stage you're what, 15, 16, something like that.
I was 15, yeah. I think maybe I just turned 16. Yeah, just turned 16. Yeah, it was 6 weeks down in New Zealand, five races, 5 weekends. Brand new cars. We had a lot of issues with the cars in the first 2 weekends. But I was more there to learn than get results.
Yeah.
And it kind of proved for that. But yeah, I think first 2 weekends, maybe even three, I remember there was a gearbox issue with quite a few of the cars, but you get to about fourth or fifth gear, 3 or 4 laps into the race, and it would just stop shifting. So yeah, but people
Great.
don't know that. People don't know this from the outside, and they think, "Oh, he really struggled there." No, I would start, and then after 4 laps, have to properly box and get someone to prod the actuator.
Just to get things moving again. But you said it wasn't all about the results, but I've got here that you had fourth places. You took fourth at Hampton Downs and at Manfield twice. Now I spoke with Greg Murphy about Manfield, and he absolutely loves the circuit. Even when
It's
he
a
was
bit
younger.
small, but yeah, it's a cool little circuit.
Yeah. He said he said the only place that he's been to like it since was up at Knock Hill. He said it's sort of small and undulating. That's about it. But anyway,
Yeah,
it's
it makes
probably where
sense.
the comparison with Knock Hill and New Zealand ends. Nothing against Knock Hill, but um, that's cool. But I saw on the grid you were racing against Lance Stroll, Santino Ferrucci, Arjun Mainiata, Markelov, Nikita Mazepin, and Thomas Randall. I mean, that's a talented grid. There's some good names on that grid.
Yeah, I think it was quite not bad for everyone going over to New Zealand for a couple of weekends.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they sort of did pretty well with that. Very cool. So you mentioned Formula 3. You joined Carlin, obviously now known as Rodin Motorsport, aren't they? Obviously, top outfit. I mean, everyone knows about Trevor Carlin, don't they? I mean, I think there's a book or a documentary on him called Talent Spotter, and it's pretty accurate. What was it like working with them? And I guess it was a no-brainer to go there.
Yeah, it was kind of all set up really, and the team was massive at the time. It's 6 cars, so it was quite because you had the three Carlins and then the three Jagonia I Am Carlins, with the KFC yellow cars. And we were all under the same roof. But yeah, it was great because we had Giovinazzi, who was in his second or third year in the championship,
Yeah.
knew the car super well. We had George, obviously, coming in, who was fast. Ryan Tveta, Gustavo Menezes, and Tatiana Calderon.
Yeah.
And it was great to kind of push myself against Antonio, because there was a lot to learn from someone who'd been in the series that long, and he was very quick. And then, yeah, me and George kind of, I'd say in pace, quite close to each other. It's just I lacked a little bit on the experience side early on. Um, because he'd done a year, won the British F4. Yeah, so no, it was good. Lots learning. That car obviously is quite a step up from the F4. There's a ton of downforce, a few more mechanical and obviously aero differences in terms of feeling and setup and all of that. So there's a few things to learn and be more sensitive about. And yeah, I managed to hone a lot my driving, which helped me for future years.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I've just seen a long comment coming in there. Yes, we are going to come to that. It's all about later on, further down the line. Dan Mayhew, thank you for the question. We'll come to that. But yeah, I mean, that first year, obviously, it was all about learning, as you said, and set up and a different kind of car. But, you know, you got points on your debut weekend at Silverstone. Good news for Silverstone today as well. We've got the British Grand Prix for 10 more years, which is good. Must have been again, like a shot in the arm, points on the debut, and then 5th at Hockenheim, and then of all places to get a first podium, the Nürburgring. That's what I've got here. That must have felt pretty cool. I mean, okay, it's not Nordschleife, but why would it be? But if you're going to get a first podium in F3, it's not a bad place to get it, is it? That must have been a cool weekend.
Yeah, it was. I think who was I on the podium with? Maybe it was Rosenquist or Giovinazzi or so. A few of them anyway. It was just a good progression through the year, and we had a good car in Nürburgring. Yeah, it felt good. I honestly, I'm trying to remember. I think it was just a long time coming, even though I hadn't been in cars for that long. But there's a lot of races in back then in Formula 3, you had 3 races per weekend. And it was a long time coming where I'd felt like I had the speed, and I managed to do it. It was my only podium that year, but at the same time, it was a good year, I think, to get podiums or a podium. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the emotion attached to it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that first podium, I said, I've just got it up on the screen here. There's a few point finishes, quite a lot of points finishes in there as well, top 10s, and just it was Felix Rosenquist did win, and Nick Cassidy second.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, Nick first race. So yeah, I mean, so good company, but also again, I mean, it's just another little notch saying, yeah, I can do this. You can run at the front and be at the thick end of things, which is great. I guess we're happy with that first year and the way it all panned out in the end.
I think in hindsight, yeah, like obviously there was an expectation to try and emulate Max Verstappen, which I think obviously some people go one more championship champion, bred to be the best. I think that could have been possible with a bit more preparation, and if I knew earlier that was really the path that I was going to take to go straight into Formula 3, I think definitely I could have done way more testing, which a lot of kids now do. And I think that would have put me in a much better position. But at the same time, like these things, it was an opportunity that came up. And then very soon after that, I started testing cars. So I couldn't have prepared any more from the point that I knew. So I was kind of thrown in a bit at the deep end. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, the grid was stacked. We really had, I think George Russell finished 7th or 8th after winning British F4 the year before, and I finished 12th in the championship. Albon was somewhere similar.
Yeah.
So really, it was, if with a bit more patience, it was kind of like a testament to how quickly I could adapt. But of course, it wasn't a championship winning year, but it was definitely something to go, okay, there's something there. So yeah, I'd say in hindsight, I'd be happy with that if I did it again.
Yeah, I think, and especially given the timescales, as you say, I mean, obviously with more time to prepare, who knows? But I mean, and you mentioned the grid. I mean, again, some of the names we've got, like Felix Rosenquist, he's now out in IndyCar. We've got Antonio Giovinazzi, Jake Dennis. I mean, Charles Leclerc was on the grid. Lance Stroll, George Russell, Alex Albon, Ferrucci, Calderon, Pietro Fittipaldi. I mean, it's a heck of a grid, and to be competitive straight off the bat.
Cassidy, Gunter, there's a few more,
Yeah, I mean, well, the whole grid was good, wasn't it? And to be, punching at the top end, excellent stuff. Switched to Van Amersfoort the following year, 2016. What brought that about? I mean, obviously they were a strong team, and the switch sort of paid off. But what was the thinking initially?
I think there was a couple of things. We felt that the Mercedes engine was slightly stronger, and they showed a lot of pace with Charles and at a couple of other races, and they had, I think, quite a bit more investment into that year, so it made quite a lot of sense to go there. Summarizing that year, we were very quick. I remember fighting for. I was 1 and 2 with Stroll up until halfway through the championship, and then it just broke down. We had I qualified first, second, and first at the Nuremberg track, the four-cornered one, Norris Ring.
Yes, the street one.
And then I got the engine broke down in a warm up, and I had a 3x10 place grid penalty. And then from there, everything just kind of took a bit of a back seat, and I think we started to have a lot of little problems. But I don't know really. We were definitely fast that year. I had a lot of pace. And I think by the end of it, I should have really been third or fourth in the championship, but I think ran out of fuel on the way to a podium in the final weekend, and then got disqualified for that. I just little things that take it out, and then that dropped me from I think guaranteed fourth in the championship to sixth. So. Yeah. Little things like that where you go, okay, actually, to be fair, it was a much better year than it looked. But at the same time, honestly, they had a good, fast car. In certain conditions, it worked extremely, extremely well. It looked good. And I think was a good middle year of F3, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you had your first win thrown in there at Paul Ricard as well, which is always very nice. To get the first win, top step of the podium and all that. Good stuff. And I mean, just watching it, it was the first year that I kind of really started taking notice of you racing, because partly because obviously you won in the first weekend, and then there were strong results followed. And then, as you say, I was watching it thinking, this guy is so unlucky. He's just, it seemed to be little things, as you said, which you touched on. And I just thought,
we had.
It must have done your head in.
we had testing on the Wednesday or Thursday before that first weekend, and I went to the practice start. Did the practice start? Went 2 corners down Paul Ricard, and the car's on fire. So I pull to the side, and it just engulfed in flames on the back, and burnt through to the top part of the chassis, so we had to replace the tub, engine, all of that.
Wow.
Because it was an accident, I got another 1x10 place grid penalty, so I had 4x10 place grid penalties across the year. It was lucky I didn't get 6, because we had a bit of a fight with the stewards over that one, because it's another 3x10 places before we've even started it, so they let me off with a 1x10 place.
Right.
I had another engine break in a test, and luckily that was a test engine and not a race engine, and because then that would have been another 3x10 places, which would have been ridiculous. And then a couple of little things. I think Zandvoort, I had a damper failure when I was on the podium, and I had to it didn't affect the result. Luckily, I managed to keep everyone behind, but just sliding around, feeling that the rear left damper was broken, which is not a nice place at all to have the rear left go. It didn't go completely, but some of the bump rubbers I think had worn through. But no. They had such a fast car, and it was a bit of a what could have been year. From a global perspective, obviously you learn, you make some mistakes yourself, but I think I was held back a little bit from some of those things.
Yeah, sure. Just it felt like the year threw a lot at you, and you got a lot out of it. Despite that, which is pretty good. Well, on to a final year in F3 before it's moved forward. You moved to like Prema, the Prema power team with Mick Schumacher and Zhou Guanyu and with Gunter, and strong lineup, and again a strong car.
Yeah, it was super fast. I think I had 10 or 11 poles across the year to Norris's 9. So we were fast. We struggled a bit with pace at the beginning of the races. So I'd normally be one of the fastest Mercedes that year. I think VW stepped it up a bit compared to the previous year. And I struggle a bit at the beginning of the races and kind of be a bit on the back foot compared to the guys around me. And because everyone else was around me was VWs normally, and the Mercedes would be a little bit further back, I just kind of got munched on a couple of the first laps. Also, early on in that year, I made 2 big mistakes. One at Po when I was leading on the first lap, and I think another at Silverstone. Yeah, Silverstone when it was damp. So that took like Po's a guaranteed win once you get off the line and go into the lead. So that was really, really silly, but a big learning point for me.
Yeah,
And Silverstone was just, an unfortunate mistake, but that took a win and a second place away from me in the points, and kind of takes you away from being in protected mode. It puts you in over attack mode, and I think just completely the wrong approach for how to enter into a championship. And I think the thing is, for me, I went from karting where really I just did everything myself, and just got in and drove and did a great job, to going into cars and having a lot of different people saying a lot of different things to you.
right.
And I didn't really find my inner peace to be able to know what works for me. So, like I think I experiment, or across the years experimented, but first year I had like a full-time trainer and someone who'd prepare you to get in the car, and I felt like that made me too ready to get in the car. Like I wanted to warm up with the car. So I prefer to be very calm and get in, not like heart rate at 150 or 180, ready to go. And some people do. Some people prefer that way because they're like that. But I prefer to be relaxed and not over push.
Sure.
And I think that was one of the years where, for the first time, people are telling me how to kind of win a championship and behave in a championship. And I just didn't get it right. And I learned a lot from it, and a lot of those things helped me for later on. But just, you start hesitating here and there, and that was
Because it
what.
kind of takes the instinct out of it almost, just sort of
Yeah, exactly. You
thinking
lose
about
your
ways.
natural instinct, and
Yeah,
you still mess up from time to time with the natural instinct, right? I did it still in F2, but I was in a much better place with my mind in
yeah.
that F2 season than I was there. And yeah, so that was a big learning curve for me, but the speed was unreal. We were so fast, and I think also the car had changed a lot because they'd added this weight under the roll hoop to create space after someone flipped, and kind of uh, the roll hoop they decided needed more strengthening. So they added another 1.5-2 kilos of weight up here, which makes a difference in the COG, center of
Yeah,
gravity. And then we had an adapted front wing with different end plates. I think the diffuser had changed slightly. So all these things kind of made the car not perfect. And Prema definitely, I know, can make a perfect car, but we struggled a bit throughout the year to kind of get it there.
sure.
And I think that made it a little bit tentative to drive in some ways. But yeah, it was, again, another strong year, but another one of what could have been. And I finished 4th in the championship after
Mm.
getting the most poles and being fast. So yeah, it is
Yeah,
what it is. You have to learn and kind of take the good and the bad and move on.
yeah. I mean, I just mentioning about about the weight in the roll hoop and just little changes to the end plates and things like these are little things that people just don't see or think about from the outside. That I'm not saying I do know about. Obviously, I didn't know until you said. But people say, "Oh, so and so's really slow and he's not doing this and he's not doing that," and you think it doesn't make him bad. There's obviously so many fine tunes to every little part of the car, isn't there, that can make a huge difference. And it
Yeah, and
does
it
rub me around the
just
twist sometimes when I hear negativity about things. You think, go on, then you try it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the thing with these things is like, oh yeah, it was an extra 15 kilos heavier as well, the car. And that for me was the thing that made it like very tentative because
Sure.
um it just sends it over the edge. Like the car could be perfect for what it is, and you start adding these little things and it can just send it over the edge. And like that was the thing I think that year that just made it difficult, and it was again very quick but very very difficult to repetitively drive at that speed, you know.
Sure, sure. And that's the thing. It's the consistency and the repetitiveness, isn't it? That's where it can just start to change a bit. I've just seen we got Chris Whitty is in, former guest on here. Chris Whitty. Chris actually gave me your email address, so you can. So yeah, you
Yeah,
can blame Chris.
he's
If
a legend and knows everyone within this sport, so
the
he's a
man
good man
is,
to have.
he is absolutely brilliant with some incredible stories, and yeah, an amazing guy, and a great bloke. I met him at Silverstone alongside Kenny Atchison, last year. Two again, who's come on here in the past. So yeah, thank you for tuning in, Chris. Great to see you, and I hope you're feeling better. I know you've not been very well in the last couple of weeks, so I hope you're feeling better. Right, yes. So step forward. So did you feel like, apart from the championship win, which would have been nice, did you feel like you sort of got all you had got in terms of driving out of Formula 3, and were looking at other things?
I think I'd got on very well with the car. I think in some people's minds, if I'd have done Formula Renault or Formula 4 before that, people would have said, okay, you know, spent too long in Formula 3, which, you know, people did. But given where I'd kind of jumped to, I think I deserved the extra year. And yeah, we looked at that time, I joined Ferrari at the end of 2017.
Yeah,
And it was natural to progress more into the kind of F1 world by doing GP3, and ART had an opening, and obviously had won the championship multiple years in a row before, and yeah, just naturally made sense to jump there.
absolutely, and obviously they're still going strong now, which is great. Just quickly, you mentioned about joining Ferrari. I mean, obviously, I've been I've been a fan of motorsport for a long time, and uh, almost 40 years. And Ferrari, everyone knows Ferrari. I mean, we all know what Mr. Vettel said about Ferrari, and it's kind of true. I mean, how did it come about that you joined their academy young driver program? I mean, how did that come about, and what did you think? Because you're obviously different to me, but my head would have exploded if I had got that call. But
Um,
you're probably much calmer than I am.
yeah, but I don't know. I'm very calm with that sort of stuff, but
Right.
I was teammates with Joe Gornu
Mm.
in Formula 3 with Prema, and he was Ferrari at the time, Ferrari Driver Academy, and I think it was Po Grand Prix that year. Massimo Rivola, who at the time was heading up the Ferrari Driver Academy, is now CEO of Aprilia in MotoGP,
Cool.
and he pulled me aside, I think, after all the races, because I that was one of the early mistakes where I was leading and crashed. Pulled me aside and he said something like, look, you're so fast that you don't need to do that. Like you need to kind of hone your skills, like in the sense that you don't need to worry about the speed. You don't need to push anymore because you've got something that like no one really has. Um, so just take a step back. And then that kind of developed through the year and more talking. And yeah, at the end of the year, there was a contract, and we went from that basically.
Wow. And that's a pretty cool thing to be involved with, with Ferrari at any stage. Another question from Craig Homer. Hello, Craig. We're going to come to that as well. Yes. So you got in with Ferrari. You were ART, ART Grand Prix. Step up GP3, and a podium on your debut in Spain, Barcelona. Good place to start, and then wins at Paul Ricard again, and the Red Bull Ring again.
Yeah,
Are they two circuits that you like particularly, or is it just the way it falls that you went well there?
I liked Red Bull Ring. I think I I won in everything I raced at a Red Bull ring, which
Wow.
is ironic considering I was in the Red Bull Junior team. And when I won after that, Helmut Marko had to give me the trophy the year after I was dropped. Um,
Ooh.
it was quite funny actually. I mean, it's life, but I just that was quite a strong moment for me.
Yeah, I'll
Quite
bet.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
Um, But no, Paul Ricard, like some people love it, some people hate it. I actually love it because I think it's super technical in terms of how the long corners are. And I've just always had a good style that's kind of worked there. So yeah, I enjoy it every time I go there. It's lovely down in the south of France and nice little time.
Yeah, nice part of the world. And there's a lot of drivers that said they really enjoy it. I don't think it's the fans that don't seem to like it because
No, there's a lot that
it on
don't
TV, it
like it
hurts your
as
eyes.
well. I can understand that, but there's a lot of drivers that don't like it as well.
Really?
And of
Okay.
course, most of them don't say it obviously in public,
Right,
but
yeah, yeah,
I'm like, I don't understand why you have a problem with it. It's great. And they're like, oh, sector three is just, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, yeah, because it's difficult. Like you can't do
yeah,
it because you lock a wheel in all the combined areas. So
yeah.
whatever.
No, no. I'm on the. I remember the old one back in '86 and '87. That was a proper one down the. Is it the Mistral Straight at the back where there's no chicanes? And remember seeing Ayrton Senna had a wing failure in the Lotus and stuck it in the barrier at the end of the straight, and that was the first time that I jumped watching racing, thinking, "Wow!" So I've got a bit of a soft spot for Paul Ricard. Never been, but one day. But yeah, so that year, we had was it 5 further podiums from the ones we mentioned before. Third overall. Happy enough with that from like stepping up.
Yeah, I mean, I struggled a lot with that car. It seemed no matter what you could drive it any way you liked, and it would do the same thing. And so it meant like the other Formula 3 car, the F2 car, you have to drive well and you'll be rewarded massively. Like I could pole and gap someone by 3 or 4 tenths when I put the lap 100% together. If I
Mm.
did that in GP3, I gained half a tenth maybe. Like it was one of those where you could kind of just drive anywhere you wanted and it would produce the same time, which I found very strange but very limiting.
Sure.
And I never quite got my head around it. And I just didn't. Obviously, I wasn't bad, but the car was super understeery, and I couldn't really get it to work the way I wanted to, and get the rotation the way I wanted to. And yeah, just like putting all of that together. It wasn't a bad year, but just couldn't get the speed that I had before
Yeah.
and after out of that one car,
Sure.
um,
And
which was a bit odd for me, and I couldn't get my head around it. But I kind of did that year and looked beyond, and yeah,
and
didn't have that problem again. So
yeah, absolutely. And I guess when that happens, it must just put that kind of thing in your mind, even subconsciously, of no matter what I do here, it's just gonna be roughly where it was before, and that must be just almost not put you on the back foot, but you must think, oh, I'm trying. I'm I'm sort of I'll do
yeah,
my best.
I just was. I mean, to a couple of people, like it's not explainable.
Yeah,
I'm telling you that I should be faster, but I'm not. But yeah, it was a good year overall and a lot learned, especially with the Pirellis. It was tough to kind of get to grips with them a bit. But yeah, third, I'll take it and go to F2.
yeah, absolutely. And F2, you went to, and obviously 2019, we all know was a tricky year, and well, that's an understatement of the year, but we'll come to that shortly. 2019 with Charus, with this Sauber team. Bit of a slow start in Bahrain. I was just because thereafter that it was pretty solid thereafter. Well, it was very solid thereafter. And was it just an issue of like setting things up in Bahrain, or was it just one of those weekends where it didn't happen?
Yeah, I crashed in qualifying. Actually, the pace was okay. I crashed in qualifying. We were doing an extra push for some reason. The tyres are much higher in degradation. And I just was took a bit too much curb on the exit of turn 7 out that fast chicane, and car bottomed out and I lost it. And to be fair, that was a hard hit for my head. Because I hit straight Armco barriers completely sideways. So I don't think, like, after that, the car needs a bit of repair. I probably need a smack the other way.
Just to level it up.
Yeah, and Bahrain's its own individual tyre killer kind of circuit. So I just didn't, I don't know, I didn't hit the ground running, shall we say. And then after that, yeah, I think we had strong one-lap pace, struggled in the feature races with the tyre degradation. But I'd kind of always, I think, actually, again, I had quite a few issues that year. I had a gearbox failure in the feature race at Baku. So I had to start last. I finished last and I had to start last for the sprint
Remember
race.
that,
So
yeah.
that sucks.
Yeah.
And I think I was running about 8th at the time. So you get reverse grid pole for the sprint race. Monaco, I qualified 2nd, my first time at Monaco, and there was a leak of the fuel tank and on the grid. So car shuts off, fire in the back. They didn't see that, tried to get me restarted, but was no go, had burnt through all the ignition cables. So you finish last and you start last in Monaco, which is great fun. No. So we'd had 2 races, 4 races technically taken out by mechanicals.
Wow.
At that point, and that's not even halfway through the championship. And to be honest, things that you can't control a gearbox failure, you can't really control a fuel leak. These things are meant to be, what's the word? Hauled over every 3 years. They should survive 3 years, and it was 5 or 6 months old. So
wow. So well
yeah,
short of the life that
yeah, and we had nothing protruding to damage it. It just wasn't up to spec with the wear. I think it was a manufacturing defect or something like that. So yeah, a couple of, as I say, bad ones. And didn't really help on the championship side, and made the first half of the year look worse than it was. But then, yeah, the last half was great. Okay, I'm putting aside Spa for now, because I think you'll want to talk about that in a sec. But
yeah.
the last half, coming like Monza, pulled it, made a mistake in the sprint race, which meant I finished outside of the points, but I was running P2 behind Aitken. Just, I was pushing like crazy to try and win that race. I really, really wanted to. But then after that, I think the last 3 races I had a pole, 2nd, and a 3rd. So it was strong, and again the feature races weren't bad. I think solid 5th, 6s, that sort of stuff, and then sprint races, a few podiums. So.
Yeah, so I mean, it showed that it was there when it all came together, and which was strong end to the season. So one of those podiums that you got was in Sochi in Russia. Now, again, this is I think it's a circuit that probably none of us have been to.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it? Because again, from the outside looking in, it seemed to divide opinion with it. Some people loved it, some people didn't. I mean, I always thought that left-hander, the big sweeping left-hander, looked absolutely brilliant. That looked great fun. But
I think it was,
from a driver's point of view, what you thought of it?
It was tough. I mean, the whole weekend is quite tedious because you've got to take 2 flights to get there. There's a lot of hotels around, but not many nice ones. And when I say nice, like we're not talking like the 5-star. Well, the 5-star ones, just the ones that are like satisfactory.
Yeah.
Where you go, actually, I'm quite relaxed here. There aren't many of those. So all the F1 guys take those ones because they're the ones that are close, and obviously they have the budget to do that. So the hotels that you're kind of left with without paying ridiculous amounts for, a decent 4-star somewhere, which there's not many of, Aren't great. The breakfast was unedible. You had to have the hospitality from the track, and it was horrendous, and that was the only option. All of these things are.
All set up.
It sounds very like how would I say, bad. Like, oh, this guy's clearly hasn't ever slummed it. Take that out your head for a second. It really isn't. Like, the breakfast, genuinely, you would say to someone when they're going to Sochi in the future, don't bother going to the breakfast there. Don't do it. And they go, yeah, right, okay. And they go and they're like, you're right. And every person that this has happened has said the same thing. And they go, yeah, you're 100. I didn't believe you, but you're 100% right. You can't.
Wow.
And then the track itself, I actually enjoyed. I did a lot of sim on the F1 there, and I enjoyed it a lot in the F1 car because of how, like, you can kind of release the brake and carry so much speed. The F2 car's a bit different, and quite challenging in its own way. But yeah, the track was okay, and good overtaking, good racing down into turn 2, I think is the actual turn. So yeah, it was okay as a track.
Yeah, cool. And I think obviously with what's happened in Russia, or with Russia since, has sort of clouded people's judgment of it, I think. I mean, I always thought it was pretty good to watch. Excuse me. Yeah, pretty good to watch.
Yeah, I mean, turn 2, the start was always a bit like...
A bit dicey, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
well, I think a lot of us watching were sort of in, sharp intake of breath, so goodness knows what you guys were doing.
Looking in the mirrors and praying no one forgot to heat up their brakes.
Yeah, nobody fired it. Just want to touch on, you raced in front of the British Grand Prix crowd in Formula 2 at Silverstone. That must have been pretty special, I mean, because obviously from where you're from, Silverstone's not a million miles away. It's very much a home circuit for you personally. That must have been a terrific experience, just in front of the crowd and the energy of Silverstone and everything.
Yeah, it's great. I love the track. The environment, obviously, it's got busier and busier now, and it was already busy before that. And seeing that many fans coming to watch is great. And also the F2 timing was not bad, so you ended up getting a fair few people watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame that year I didn't end up on the podium. Whereas the next year, when no one was there, no friends or family either, I ended up on the podium. So
I'm going to touch on that in a minute. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I always think as a Brit and wanting to be a racing driver when I was a kid, I mean, I just think, oh, racing on Grand Prix weekend, I would have absolutely loved that. Huge crowd and yeah, brilliant, isn't it? Must have been.
it's great. Like, it's very hard to describe the emotion, but you just feel kind of like at home. There's an extra buzz, and I think you take in a bit more of the surroundings than you do normally.
Yeah, looking the wider view. Okay. The very unfortunate and tragic elephant in the room. Spa 2019. We lost Antoine Hubert. And we've all seen it, and I wish I hadn't. Obviously, your teammate was involved as well, which we're going to come to. We don't want to spend too long on this. You said it's okay to talk about, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen the footage, and I haven't watched it back and things like, because we don't want to see that kind of thing at all. I mean, where were you in relation to where the accident was? I don't remember, and as I said, I haven't watched it back, so I don't want to.
So I had, in qualifying, my throttle sensor broke, so I had to retire from qualifying. So I started last. I was quite a few cars behind. I think, like, for those who have seen the video, I was one of the first cars to kind of stop and go through. Yeah, my recollection of it was I was overtaking, I think, Marino Sato into Eau Rouge at the time, and I'm halfway through it, just done a great overtake, and I see all this flashing yellows on the side. Just out the corners of my eye, because you've got one in the middle of Eau Rouge to the left and or Radion, and then you've got kind of one at the top. But the one at the top, I could see there was quite a bit of smoke, or dust, or I don't know at the time. And basically, from that point, that there's something there, and if it's a crash there, it's going to be a safety car at least. So I was fully on the brakes from that point, and just managed to stop kind of before. And my recollection of it was, I thought there was like 4 cars involved by the amount of debris, because there was just a rear end there, obviously a car facing me, which was Antoine's, like that, and then Juan later on upside down. And I think I went past, so I'd seen everything. I went past, and you're kind of like processing it because you're still in racing mode. So you're like, okay, I kind of got to catch the pack in front. And then I was like, oh, that was really bad. I still thought I knew there wasn't 4 cars, but I thought there was 3 cars. Then I'm like, okay, so that was one of the BWTs, and that was Juan. And then I remembered the front of the nose was missing from Juan's car, and I could see his feet. And then I'm like, oh shit, like that's really, sorry for swearing.
No,
but just replaying.
No, it's absolutely fine. No problem.
That was really, that's not good. But your first thoughts are not.
They're not about
what?
that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's a really, really bad crash. And you're not going to be thinking that someone's passed away in that accident, because it's just not, normal.
Yeah.
And then I think I was asked about it, because obviously the other car of the team wasn't responding, and I'm like, and I gave the answers of what I'd seen on that side. But I couldn't understand how the rest of it had happened and how the cars had ended up there. It just, it's like a road traffic accident.
It was
You
just
can
an
kind
aftermath.
of dissect how everything kind of happened, but I was sat there going, no, that doesn't make sense. I can't understand how the cars ended up there.
Right.
So anyway, after it, there was quite a long time of waiting before hearing anything. And I think I'd arrived back to the truck, and half an hour had gone past, and then I saw the video. And I know some people are very sensitive to these kind of things, and I fully respect that. But
Sure.
for me, I kind of needed to understand what was going on and what happened.
Of course.
And I'll go into more reasons to why as well later. But I saw it, and immediately I was like, yeah, that's someone's gone in that. It's just not possible to. It's too big of an impact, and seeing how it happened. But at the same time, you don't want to believe it, and you also don't know who either, because there was no feedback. Everyone kind of knew something had happened because of the way the behaviors were and the communications at the time.
It was just different.
Yeah, and like 1 medical helicopter took off, not 2. And that there's certain things which just click, but you don't know what the deal is, but you kind of can guess. So I kind of naturally held back from going like, okay, it was him, until it was announced, and then I broke down, obviously, as you would when you understand these things. But then for me, it was more about understanding the accents. I think like that night I watched it over 250 times on repeat, just trying to understand and process it, because for me, my way of dealing with stuff is to understand it, and then that there's no other way around it, that something else couldn't have happened, because that's how it happened. So that was why I watched it so many times.
It was almost making a definitive answer in your head, almost.
Yeah, because
process
then you understand, and you can kind of forgive things that have happened. And yeah, what a fluke chain of events to happen. And yeah,
I'm
the
actually
thing
glad you
is,
used that word, because I've used similar words. It's just one of
It's
those things. I mean, that could happen 100 times, and it wouldn't have the
yeah,
out.
yeah. I think that the problem is, right, and this is the reality of it. If any racing car hits another racing car stood still, it's going to be bad. And that was a
Well,
wake up call, I think, to everyone
yeah,
to kind of have a look at what we can do. And I campaigned a lot for Spa to change something, because at the end of the day, it's not anyone's kind of fault, but you're coming up a blind hill
mm,
where actually, to be fair, you can't even brake efficiently because the car is really light at the
it's going
time,
right,
and
of course. Yeah,
so you can only brake when you kind of get after it, or it takes a while to do it, and there's no visibility. So you may as well open up and create as much runoff instead of the cars bouncing back on, which is why I kind of campaigned for it. Whether people believed it's wrong or right, I think the facts kind of stand for themselves. But
I've
again, it's no
always
one's
said
fault.
leave the track as it is, but if you do leave the track, there's got to be, that I'm not as a fan. I'm a bit old school about grass and gravel and stuff, but in some places you absolutely need a runoff, and that is one of them. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it was very unfortunate with what happened in with Delano in with the wet race and that. But that's again a lack of vision.
It was a
Unfortunately, it happened shortly
similar kind of
after.
thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, so that was that, and it created a very sour taste for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things as a driver is you kind of go, oh, you're invincible, or as any young person,
Yeah.
until it kind of happens to someone in a similar environment and
Mm.
age. And to be fair, one of the things I said was like, I wouldn't put myself in that position. I'm not, stupid enough to, kind of thing, before seeing that.
Yes.
And Antoine is one of the smartest guys I knew, and he ended up in that situation, and immediately I was like, "You know what? It can happen to anyone."
Sometimes there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, so I kind of had to go through that, accept everything, accept the little
Well,
things in my head, and yeah, kind of, I think he made everyone who was close to him a bit better and have a bit more meaning towards what they were doing, which I think I'm thankful for, if anything, out of that situation, to give me a bit more clarity and mental support, I guess.
yeah, it's a positive that can be taken from what was absolutely
Exactly.
horrendous. Yeah. Just very quickly, I mean, obviously you were teammates with Antoine before, and you said you were close to him, clever guy, a guy who not forgotten, obviously, but gets kind of less mentioned was your teammate. Juan Manuel Correa. He was obviously in a bad way with his legs, and he's back racing again. Just for with your teammate being obviously not apportioning any blame whatsoever, obviously being the guy that ran into Antoine's car, it was your teammate and it was your friend. It must have just been awful for the team at the time. I mean, I can only imagine how dark, well, what kind of a cloud there must have been over the team for a good while afterwards as well, because he really damaged his legs, and yeah, it must have been terrible.
Yeah, I think, I don't, it's not really completely for me to say, but at the same time, it's not unknown. But there was a lot more than just the legs at the time,
Sure.
and he was in a real bad way.
Mm.
And to be fair, I
Just
think he knows
he had a
uh,
head, or he
a
had
lot of
something.
a lot. It
Yeah.
wasn't down to just two, three things. There were five, six, seven, eight things.
Okay.
And he, if he wasn't as fit as he was, I don't think he would have, well, definitely been in the situation he is now, or even here. But again, that's not completely for me to say. But at
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
time, like, he's so lucky and in a good way prepared for that, especially on the internals and all
Mm.
the abdominal muscles and muscles around the lungs. That basically that level of G force that he was subject to is not easy to kind of pull through on,
Sure. Sure.
and creates a lot of or not lasting, but later side effects, which are actually quite rare to study, because it's rare that someone ends up surviving such a high G situation from the beginning. You know, there's
Sure.
only a handful of well, probably a bit more of a handful, but a few names that go through that level of G without having bigger issues to kind of pull through of. So yeah, it was a dark cloud for the team, obviously, and a lot of the team had worked with Antoine and me back in 2016 as well, because some of them came from Van Amersfoort. And I think for the whole kind of community, because everyone loved Juan, everyone loved Antoine, and it just was so, you know, dark and kind of unnecessary and unexpected. So yeah, and yeah, for me as well, I'm like, these are two of my friends, and one's in the hospital and one's, well, not with us anymore. So yeah, bit of a strange end to the year where I
Yeah.
kind of, you just had to focus on what you were doing. All of
Yeah.
that was so out of your control once it had happened, but you tried to support where you could. And I went to see him in the hospital a couple of days after he woke up, and yeah, still obviously keep in touch.
Yeah, good stuff. And I think, you know, some things you'd think, so, you know, some things are meant to be. And obviously, Charles, who was such a good friend with Antoine, went on to win his first Grand Prix the following day. And I think if people weren't crying before, they were then, weren't they? It was just one of, you know, as fans looking in, it was just one of those things that it was almost inevitable. And it was a lovely way to sort of just lift things a little bit for us watching, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for. I appreciate it's not the easiest subject, but thank you for giving your insights on it. Not to dismiss it, but better news that year. You installed as test driver for Alfa Romeo and Sauber later that year, which must have been, you know, like another a very cool thing. What was your first experience of an F1 car? The first.
It's incredible. I mean, the power that it has, and the linear feeling of the power, because the F2 car, for example, was single turbo, but 640 horsepower. But by being single turbo, it took a long time to build the boost. And when it did come in, you went from nothing to everything. And it was just a pain in the ass to kind of like control. Whereas you go into F1 and you put your foot down and it just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. You get more and more power. And so many kind of, not driver aids, but at the end of the day, you can tune the car completely to how you want it with all the differential settings, brake settings, and that was really nice. Like, you could really feel how well engineered these cars are, and how it makes almost everything very easy, because you just have to push and get the maximum out of it. And any little thing that isn't perfect, you can try and adapt. Of course, when it's your first day in it, you don't know what's right and what's wrong in terms of what's 98% and what's 100% of the car. But yeah, just the tunability, the downforce, the power, the braking. It was everything that you kind of expect, and you understand why they're so expensive and so loved as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, as I said, I mean, yeah, I've never, you know, I sat in a mock-up F1 car once, Renault on the Champs-Elysees in a shop, which is the closest I'm ever going to get. When you're in there, obviously, with Alfa Romeo Sauber, it's all business, and you've got to go there and feel the car. And did you ever get a point where you would just like for a split second where you were just thinking, "Bloody hell"? Yeah, I mean, did you ever get that? Oh my god, I'm doing it, because
I think it's on the startup and kind of garage procedure. So you're in the car and there's a whole. It's obviously quite a complex car, so there's a whole switch on, switch off procedure, and the switch on is quite long in terms of it involves like radio calls of what you need to do and all of this sort of stuff. And the tires go on, blankets are on, and there's all these kind of signals like you see on the Formula One game of how, you know, the mechanic signals the blankets to come off. So it's like that. then the blankets come off, and you get the smells, you get the sound of the gun, and you're just like, oh wow, it's yeah. And then once you drive out the garage, you're back into racing mode. But
Yeah.
to that point, it is really like as you see it on the Formula One game. Add in some radio calls of how you switch on the car, and that's exactly how it is. So
Wow.
it's pretty surreal. Like I still kind of remember the sounds and the smells and the way the car shakes as they do it, and yeah, it's cool.
Wow. Very cool. I guess that, like the big kid in you comes out just for a split second and you think, oh, wow.
Yeah, definitely. It's similar to actually when I drove, I think in the night in the GT for the first time, and I came out and all the dash lights are on and everything. You're like, oh, this is quite cool. Like it's like reminds me of a simulator.
No, fantastic. I think we'll touch on that shortly. We'll just wear the time.
Oh yeah,
But yeah,
don't worry about it. It's more for you than for me right now because obviously we change days.
oh, okay, fair one. Okay, well, if people don't mind, we'll stick on for a bit longer. Terrific. So, yeah, so I'm just smiling at that because I know how I'd feel. And yeah, anyway, so yeah, 2020, obviously very. Oh, just one second. We've got some more questions here. Max Edmonds, hello, Max. Thank you for your question. Talking about F1 and IndyCar, we're going to come to that as well. We are going to get to them, guys. Don't worry. Further back from live. Live from home. Watch it a few times. Yeah, someone Mason789 on YouTube. He said, yeah, he was further back from the live, and yeah, he just said that it was certain that Anton wasn't going to survive it. So yeah, that was very, very sad. So yeah, 2020, bad year for the world in general, as we know, and we've lost a lot of, many, many hundred thousands of people, and very, very difficult. But in terms of the racing, you had a good year with Virtuosi Racing. You won on your debut, no prizes for guessing where, Red Bull Ring. From that first race, did you think, yeah, this is going to be a good year?
Yeah. Because we'd done a test in no, Abu Dhabi. Actually, I can't remember where, but all our testing kind of got cancelled because of COVID,
Sure.
and we kind of went into it blind. So, like, I'd done, I think, 3 days of winter testing at the end of the year with the old spec tires and all of that. No, we got 3 days at Bahrain, yeah, but a lot more delayed than we expected, and they went okay. There was no problems with that, but we spent a lot of time doing more research for the new 18-inch wheels and more technical stuff than the actual pure pace driving. So it was hard to know kind of where we stacked up, and then there was a lot of information that was digested and number crunched by the team to then put us in a good position for the first weekend. But as drivers, I was like, I don't know. I mean, the test went okay, but I don't know where we're really at. And then we did the first race, and yeah, it was clear that we were fast. So yeah, they had an amazing car. Were definitely on top of things, and yeah, great team.
Yeah, absolutely. And excuse me. Excuse me. So yeah, obviously great start to the year. You knew there was pace in the car. Not to put words in your mouth, but I would imagine the highlight of the year, even though there was sadly no one there, was winning at Silverstone, the feature race on the 70th anniversary Grand Prix weekend. That's pretty massive, isn't it? I mean, that's very, very cool thing to have, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it was good. I think the good part of it was that the weekend before I really should have done the same, and I kind of messed up in both races and didn't maximize it. So it was like a redemption without having to wait another year like you normally would, without the world being messed up. I was able to come back the next weekend and yeah, right my wrongs and win on the 70th anniversary, which was awesome. Okay, no crowd, but I had my own little clap to myself, and yeah, it's great.
That's fantastic. I mean, again, as a non-racer, I'm just sort of a fan, really. I can't imagine the thrill of standing on a podium on a British Grand Prix. Even if there's no one there. I mean, that is, to me, in my, no, quite old now, but the little 5-year-old inside of me is just thinking, oh my God, that must be so cool. And I'm sure that was the same feeling for you. You must have, outwardly kind of calm and collected, but celebrating, but inside you must have been going nuts.
I think so, yeah. Hard to remember. I think obviously, like on the social media side, I felt a lot of support that year because everything kind of increased so rapidly, as that was the only way people could really see anything. But yeah, internally, yeah, that was great. I enjoyed winning there a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised. Took another win at Monza again. Cool podium to stand on. Yes, Monza.
Yes. Yeah, but I
I,
finished second in the race, and then Dan Ticktum had a disqualification for fuel,
yes.
and then I inherited the win. So I was almost.
You were still up there, it's
I was
good. Yeah,
definitely up there. Yeah, I pulled it and should have really won the feature
yeah,
race, but I had a stall in the pit stop and then had to come through from last to fourth or fifth or something.
yeah. Cool. You were
Wasn't
quite
too
in,
bad.
but Monza's such a special place. I mean, I've only been there once. I mean, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times on here. I was there in 2011, and I was in Milan just for a couple of days. I was going over to Venice, taking a week getting across to Venice, and I hired a Fiat Panda. I didn't know I was getting a Fiat Panda until I got to the airport. But anyway, I got the Fiat Panda.
It's very standard. They were. I
Yeah,
had them 10 times in a row in Italy.
yeah, it's absolutely stunning. But I was driving out of Milan after a couple of days, and I saw someone post to Monza, and I thought, how have I not thought about that? Well, I've got to go now. And I went there and said you could take the car around the track, pay €40, and you can take your car around the track for half an hour, which in a Fiat Panda is 3 laps. And I thought this isn't covered by the insurance, but I thought, well, just don't crash it. So but there was loads of guys on like super bikes, proper high powered, like what are they
Yeah.
called in Fast and Furious? Crotch rockets. These things hurtling past, and there's me bumbling around what was the Parabolica and a Fiat Panda. They must have been thinking, what is this guy doing? But I thought, you know what? I'm here. I'm doing it. But it's a special place, even when there's no one in there, isn't it? It's got something about it. It's very cool.
Temple of Speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very cool. So excuse me. So yeah, you came second overall behind Mick. Mick Schumacher, very, pushed him all the way. But were you proud of second, or just a bit annoyed as well that you didn't quite get the
A
title?
bit of both. I think I was very satisfied with the result. The target going into the year was top 3 finish in the championship.
Yeah.
And actually, statistically, I never dropped out of the top 2 of the championship the whole way through the year.
Wow.
Obviously, there was room for a little bit more, and definitely, definitely had the speed. I should have won on speed for sure. But I had I had a little bit of an issue with the clutch and the starts. There were 2 things. One that we made made a discovery kind of a little bit later on in the season that there was something with the clutch that it was just fluctuating more than it should have on a hydraulic level, which meant that it wasn't easy. It was kind of random. If I put the bike point in the right position, it would be random whether it would hit or not on the bike point.
Right.
And then compared to the year before, the way I was doing the starts, I had no problem, and suddenly with this, I had a problem. So it was a bit of like a learn by problems thing with that, but you don't get many with limited testing. I didn't really get any time to do practice starts, and then I was doing them every weekend, and you'd only get 1 or 2 to kind of figure out what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, it was too late before we realized that it wasn't perfect, basically, and I couldn't nail it. It was very inconsistent. So that was probably my biggest downfall. And then, like anything, you make a couple of mistakes here and there on track and bites you back. But I think in terms of showing what I was capable of, it was the perfect year for that, and I managed to do that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, cool. That was good insights. Love that kind of stuff. Inda has just said she's going to put me in volume 2 of her book, Great British Racing Drivers from my Fiat Panda. Massive sarcasm there. I'm very aware of that. Keith Mayer said flat through the parabolica. I did. I put my foot down, but it's not impressive in a Fiat Panda. I did 37 miles an hour, or whatever it was. No, it was the worst. It was the worst visual of a car going around the parabolica ever. They won't be naming it after me. I think Alboretto's got that one. But yeah, it was a strong season. And also 2021, skip forward to 2021, you had some more seat time in the Alfa and in the Ferrari. Now, there aren't many people in the world. I think you're only the third person, fourth person who's come on here who has driven a Ferrari F1 car.
That decreased.
The others being Mario Andretti, Jackie Ickx and Mika Salo. I think they're the only 3 guys that have come on here.
Did Stefan drive one or not?
Oh, Stefan Johansson. He was Ferrari.
Your list is growing by the second. So
I think that's it. Anyway, it isn't double figures for sure. It's absolutely not double figures for sure. But obviously you drove, is it in 2021, you drove the 2018 car, the SF71H, I think.
Yes.
At Fiorano. It's going to tie into a couple of questions we had here. How much, even though it was a older car, was it different to the, to the Alfa? And was it just a different beast?
Yeah, it was more different than I expected. There were things that I liked about it, and there's things I liked about the Alfa. But I kind of, obviously I can't go into details of what it is.
Of course.
But no, it was very interesting to kind of feel, because they should be quite close, and they are without being close, if you know what I mean. So the driving style and driving feel was different, and doing it on Fiorano as well is tough because it's a very slow speed track, and these cars have so much downforce that when you get to those speeds, there's no more downforce. So it's no longer a Formula One car; it's a bit more on ice, and then you start picking up the speed again, and it's a bit more natural again. So yeah, it was cool. It was cool to experience. I've driven 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 years of Formula One cars, so it's nice.
That's a cool thing to. It's a cool thing to be able to say, isn't it? I mean, it's very cool. There was a question from Catherine Major on YouTube. Hello, Catherine. She says, "What was the fastest speed you could get up to in an F1 car? Could you go full push during free practice, or is it more just testing certain settings?" Good question.
In terms of speed, I think it was maybe 218 mile an hour. But in terms of settings, it depends on the day. Sometimes teams just want to go through test items, and you're given like specific set of tires, which are normally the harder ones, just to pound some laps around, and go through everything and trying to decrease the variability in tire deg by giving you the harder one. And sometimes you're given quali runs where it's push, cool, push, but you're not running quali mode. Sometimes you are. Sometimes you get the quali mode once in the day, but they change the kind of run plan that you're doing. It's a bit different, but normally, especially at Fiorano, it was a bit more. You definitely do a couple of quali runs, and then you do some more longer runs, and then maybe finish off again with a quali run. Normally you'd have half a day because they'd have to fit 4 drivers in 2 days. So yeah, it changes. But honestly, you don't ever really know what someone's doing, especially in the FP1s. They can save the tires for the other guys for the rest of the weekend, or you can be lucky and get a test item that they need to validate on the soft set and on a quali run. But if they've got an item that they need to validate on the race side, you're doing lots of laps.
Right. Okay. Oh, cool. That's good. Good insight. I mean, very quickly, I mentioned about Monza and it being a special place. I'm going to assume Maranello's got that kind of feel about it. I mean, you mentioned it was a temple of speed. I mean, at Monza, Maranello's got to be like the Vatican for motorsport, isn't it? It's got to be, must be pretty amazing going in there.
Yeah, I mean it's massive as kind of a compound, and very historical. Everything there is Ferrari, and everyone around it is Ferrari, and you kind of become part of the community. But yeah, the facilities that Ferrari have are amazing, and you're one of the lucky few that get to see it all.
Yeah, very cool. It's one of my things. It's one of my bucket list items, which I don't think is ever going to get ticked off, is to see the inner workings of Maranello. But never mind.
It's very impressive, I have to say.
Yeah.
So sorry to make you jealous, but
it's
it's
fine.
More than what you expect.
Yeah. I'm jealous of pretty much everyone I speak to on here because they get to race cars for a living. So it's fine. Brilliant. Yeah, what amazing insight to be able to have seen. So very quickly there was an accident that you had, or a spin, or whatever we're going to call it, in Spain with the Alpha, and you just described it as strange because it just came out of nowhere. I was just wondering, when that happens, because it was a high speed thing, wasn't it? You went in backwards, and it seemed like it was completely out with your control. What goes through your mind when that happens, when the car just snaps?
That wasn't a good time, which I kind of tried to glance over.
Okay,
But yeah, no, it's fine. No, don't worry about it. It's fine.
We can skim.
But in terms of it, yeah, it was turn 3 at Barcelona, and it's not on any video or any. No one's seen it, basically.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the corner, I ended up being backwards and then hitting the wall hard multiple times. Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's a corner that is very easy. So it's a bit. That was what was odd about it, was I'd had no problems kind of before, and I didn't touch the curb or anything. But cars are sensitive, whether it was wind or whatever, just a bit too much for it, and in middle out of nowhere, just like on an oval, just goes on you, and yeah, there was no correcting it. I was backwards before I really even kind of knew it, and of course, like for me, the reason I kind of glance over it was because it was quite a knock for me personally. Like I felt very, very bad after that, because it's a opportunity that not many people get, and um, it wasn't really explainable either, which is something earlier where I have to kind of understand how things happen.
And then not knowing why.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's a lot of damage and a lot of work for a lot of people, and in an opportunity that's rare. And yeah, I never sat well with me. I never felt good about that one.
Yeah, fair enough. No, fully understand why, and we're going to move on. Fair enough. First full taste of top level GT racing with the Iron Links lot. Completely different to what you've been doing. How did you find it? First time in a big heavy car with a roof.
I enjoyed it. I found it quite tough with the ABS, because I found that it would actually be a bit of a hindrance for, should we say, top level drivers, because you're so close to the limit that it decides it's going to intervene. And it's not that you completely blow the corner, but you miss a little bit the apex and stuff. And I found that quite frustrating to kind of get my head around that I have to be slightly under the limit in this area just to make sure I don't knock it. So there was a little bit of technique that I needed to get.
A bit more reserved.
Yeah, a little bit, but really, really subtly, and only in certain areas. but otherwise, I kind of took to it quite quickly. And we're not talking about being 5/10 off. I'm talking about being a tenth or half a tenth off what was the target,
Yeah.
and target being number one person. And then yeah, we were strong as a team. We're just a bit unlucky. I think we finished fourth a couple of times. Really should have been on the podium, but didn't quite put it together. And then kind of went badly around Spa. We got caught in the accident with Jack Aitken, where the car completely got ripped apart. Davide Rigon was driving for us. It was 20 something minutes into the race. And
like
was,
Jack got fairly badly bashed up, didn't he?
Yeah, but what people don't know is Davide ended up breaking his back by being hit so hard because he was slowing down for it.
Really?
So yeah, so he was out for a while, and we had to have Alessio Rivera come and replace Davide. And then we had a crash at Nürburgring as well with Antonio. And then I had a moment with a GT4 car at the end of the year in the Intercontinental race at Indy 8 Hours, whilst I was leading, which was a shame. But yeah, so a bit of a good learning year, but tough results wise, because we just never really seemed to kind of prosper or be on the right side of things.
Yeah.
And then came Le Mans, which is where so I'd been doing the previous races with AF Corsa or Iron Links by AF Corsa. I think don't know what the name was, but Le Mans was completely Iron Links, so without AF Corsa doing it themselves. And yeah, finished third. Amazing was with the LM GTE 488 car. Doesn't have ABS, bit of a different downforce package. Great car. I loved it. I just hopped in that thing around that track. Yeah, couldn't think of anything better. So great result. Great first experience of it. Hang on, I've got the car here as well.
Oh,
yeah, little.
Oh, there you go.
I like to collect these.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
very cool.
Yeah, no, it was great with Matteo Cressone and Rino Mastronardi. So yeah, it was cool. I loved it. So looking forward to doing that again in the top category.
Yeah, absolutely. And a podium at Le Mans, you get to stand on the podium at Le Mans, which is very cool. Whether it's an overall win, class win, whatever it might be, that is a cool thing to be doing.
Indeed.
So yeah, excellent. Very, very cool. And you're back there this year, which we'll allude to. We'll come to that very shortly. Right, 2021. We are zapping on here. You got involved with IndyCar, with JHR. And I know it didn't end as certainly I wanted it to. But I mean, how did it all come about? Was IndyCar ever on the radar? Because I mean, as you can probably, as anyone who's tuned into this chat thing that we do, I love IndyCar. It's always been my thing ever since 1988, Rick Mears and all that when I was very young. And I love IndyCar. And obviously, just from your reaction there, it sounds like you were thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it might have been both, but definitely either 2019, end of 2019, end of 2020, I had a phone call or two with Dale Coyne to look to come. And it's tough because, it's actually quite outside the spectrum of what you look at as a young driver. It's maybe that's the media presence of it, that it needs to be a little bit more prominent.
Definitely.
But I wasn't quite convinced with it. And I didn't have the people around me to kind of communicate how it is and what, as a driver, you can career-wise do with it and how beneficial actually it kind of is. So yeah, I think with Dale, look, he requires budget normally, and that just wasn't possible. And so I was like, look, especially if this was end of 2019, I was like, look, I need to stay in F2 another year. I've got the support of Ferrari here, all of that sort of stuff. And it just wouldn't have been achievable at the time. And then, yeah, I think I was on holiday with my girlfriend in Sicily in August, and I'd had a call with Fred Vasseur earlier in the week to discuss about Formula One. And I'd kind of gone from a good chance of Formula One the next year to maybe 5%, something like that. And I was speaking to him about it, and he was like, "Look, if I were you, it's not to say it couldn't happen, the Formula One side, but it's just the stars don't think are going to align, because Formula One is about so many more things than just you in a certain way."
Sure.
And he's like, "Look, I'd look at IndyCar right now, and I'd look at the endurance racing as well." And the day after, my manager at the time, I think, called me and was like, "Oh yeah, so there's this team that have been running in like the junior categories out there that are trying to go into IndyCar. They've got the funding. You would be fully paid, professional, straight away. It's a pretty good deal. It's just you have to kind of build the team up, and not expect too much at the beginning." And I was in a bit of a mood where I'm like, you know what? Let's give it a go and see.
Give it a crack.
And yeah, I committed to it. So it went from doing like a test to a race to 3 races to then doing the season, and then was meant to do a few more, but
Yes,
c'est la vie, as they say.
I'm going to touch on that. We're not going to go into detail because I know you can't. But just very quickly, and I think this is going to tie back to a question that came in very, very recently. I'm just going to have a scroll up, have a very quick look. It was Craig Homer. Thank you, Craig. He says, another question, if you can fit it in. Is anything comparable between an F1 car and an Indy car when you drive them? And what do you like about both of them? That's a very good question.
I think they're not very comparable, because
There's no power steering for starters, is there?
no power steering, but Formula One is just such a level beyond anything, and I think the closest you get to that is with the Super Formula car, because the Super Formula is actually super light, compared to any other racing car. I wish the Formula 2 actually adopted their styles, because it's about 100 kilos lighter than the previous gen Formula 2.
Yeah.
And it's got power steering, 600 something horsepower, so it's a decent car, and that's probably the closest to it, but I never got to drive that car. The IndyCar, it was more like a rally car for the road. You're hustling that thing. You can put in understeer, you can put in oversteer, and it just takes everything, goes over any kind of terrain. And you can go from the most finely tuned oval car to running over the potholes of Toronto and Detroit.
Plenty of those.
Yeah, and so it isn't really comparable. I think the old Formula 3 with the downforce, if you compared that to like a 2014 F1 car, would make a bit of sense.
Okay.
Just really underpowered. But this car is just, it's its own beast in a certain way. It's not to say it's bad. It's just it's so in its own way of just manhandling it and being on top of it. You watch the drivers afterwards. Everyone has to take 5-10 minutes just to kind of regain their breath. Except for the Ganassi guys, their car seems super easy.
So, well, on the Ganassi car.
Yeah, except for the Ganassi guys, they get out like it's just a piece of piss, to be honest.
Well, I had Chip Ganassi on him before Christmas, which was absolutely amazing because he doesn't do interviews. But yeah, he just seems he always has that look of, yeah, we do it right. He just has that kind of air about him. It's like, obviously, but yeah,
they do really well.
Yeah, they're very, very cool. No, that's cool, because I'm glad you said there's no comparison, because I've been saying that people compare F1 to IndyCar, but it's like no. It's like I've always said, it's like comparing lasagna to a chocolate pudding. It's essentially food, but it's completely different. But anyway, so yeah, there we go. Just a quick one I wanted to ask about your first experience on an oval. I believe was it Texas on a race?
Texas was well, the first race was Texas. The first test was Texas, actually,
because that is a pretty mental oval, as ovals go. It's a super speedway. How did you take to ovals and all the little nuances and little tweaks and stuff. And if anyone puts in the comments it's just driving around in circles, they're getting barred. It's absolutely not.
So testing was relatively straightforward. Like, I'd say testing is probably the easiest part of it, especially on Texas and some other ones. And you run when you first start, you got more downforce than you'd normally run, and it's kind of easy, right? The difficulty is when you start trimming and taking the down. Trimming is when you take the downforce off. Car starts going light. That's when you start to feel the downforce and sorry, not the downforce, what the car is behaving. So it starts to exaggerate the balance, and that's what is the difficulty when you get to a place like Indy. Is you've got a week of testing, but you have to kind of gradually ease the car into a qualifying spec, and that is finding a car that has enough downforce to almost do all the 4 laps flat out, but also has as little downforce as possible to kind of make it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And you start to feel all different types of things when wind comes in. The balance changes, like the percentage shifts from one corner to another because you're facing the complete opposite direction. And it's such a finely tuned car that any little thing, like we're talking changing one spring 50 or 100 Newton meters, can affect the way the car, well, if it goes around or not. Texas was okay because it's so high in banking. It was just the PJ1 stuff that they had that you had to be careful of not going too high in it. But yeah, and I love the short ovals because I felt a lot closer to what I was kind of used to and was able to experiment a bit more without it being so unforgiving.
Sure.
But Indy, what's funny is, like, especially the situation I had where I kind of had to change the car and go completely unexpected into qualifying. If you do you have to do all 4 laps, like at least the first 2 laps have to be flat in qualifying to have a chance to kind of go anywhere. So you have to turn into turn 1 flat, but it's the first time in the qualifying session that you end up being at the speed where something could go wrong, because before that you're under the speed and the car's completely fine.
Sure.
So you have to go into the corner flat, and you find out what balance you have midway through the corner, and you kind of have to either stick with it, or if you bail out of it, well, your quality's pretty much done. So
Yeah.
That's what's a bit worrying, because if you've got understeer, if you've got big understeer, it's a problem. But if you've got a bit of understeer, it's manageable. And then you change your tools for the next couple of corners. But if you've got oversteer, you're a goner. So you just hope that you're kind of like in the middle of those two, and you're good.
That's mental. I just love that you just put the word hope in there at turn 1.
Well, you have to. You honestly. So I think some guys put their foot flat out and put their left foot over it and make sure they don't lift. I think some people genuinely do that.
Wow. Goodness me. I mean, obviously, and very quick, famous incident on coming out of turn 1 was Danny Sullivan back in '85 with the spin and the win. And
yes, spin and win.
I came on here. Danny Sullivan is one of my favourite human beings in the world. He was a hero of mine growing up, and I got to meet him in 2022 as well. And he said there, oh, everyone gives me credit for holding it and keeping it in the right direction. He goes, I just had, I had both feet. He said, it's the only time I've had both feet planted on the brake and my eyes closed. And then I opened them and turn 2 swings were there and off I went. He said, a complete fluke, but it looks cool. But yeah, in Indy 500, obviously is where I got this, and I said off air, I came within 50 yards of grabbing you, but you were busy. Had to settle for Dalton Cannett instead. But I mean, the Indy 500, obviously the qualifying run. I mean, again, I'm such a fan of the 500. I can't imagine what's going through your head, corner by corner, on the qualifying run. It's a pretty intense way of doing things, isn't it? It's just you on track, go. Did you feel sort of pressure with it, or did you think, right, let's go?
It's definitely a bit more pressured, but you've just got to go. Let's go. Let's do it. And you've kind of got you've got a couple more shots at it, but you've got one shot to kind of make sure you don't get it wrong. And yeah, you just once you start, you're just kind of making adjustments all the way through to keep it tuned and in the window. And yeah, the car sometimes can move away from you more quickly than you can tune it into the window.
Wow, amazing stuff. I mean, someone's just said a British super team with Callum and Jack Harvey driving. Yes, let's have that.
I
Team
want to try the IndyCar at Monza, not the banked Monza, the normal circuit Monza. I think that would be a great race.
That would be fun. Actually, someone mentioned earlier on about an IndyCar Euro series.
That was what I'm trying to refer to. I don't know about
Yeah,
a whole Euro series. Maybe 3 races across
yeah.
Europe would be great. But
We'll have a
yeah,
quick,
I'd do that hands down.
have a quick scroll here. We need to do Monza. We'll have Brands Hatch, and we'll do somewhere mental in Europe. Do somewhere absolutely nuts. I can't remember, but yes, that'd be cool.
Nordschleife.
Oh, why not? Given that we're going mental, let's do it. Get them bouncing around the carousel. That'd be terrific. So yeah, I'm cool. So Indy 500. As I said, I always talk about it, but race day. Yeah, they say it's a great spectacle in racing for the fans. I mean, I thought it was just Americans hyping it up because they're good at that.
They are very good at it.
And I didn't want to big it all up in my head too much, although I've been wanting to go for years. We finally got out there in 2022. Race day, it really is just something else. I mean, from the fans' point of view, anyway. I just the atmosphere and all the pomp and ceremony and the whole thing, regardless of what happened in the race. But beforehand, did you kind of feel that as well, thinking this is pretty mega?
Yeah, I think it all starts like there's this cannon that goes off at 5 or 6 a.m., which they don't really tell you about when you're a rookie. And yeah, I think that jumped me out of bed because the whole RV started shaking. Oh, everyone stays in RVs, by the way. So you got all
Yeah.
33 drivers pretty much at the track in their RVs. Yeah, then you've got bloody marching bands from like 6:30 to 7:30, constantly going past the RV parking, like literally 5 meters from where my bed was. They were going past.
We were sat in traffic just outside the north parking lot behind turns 3 and 4, 7 o'clock, and we could hear. I'm thinking,
Yeah, I think it was 10 to 20 individual marching bands going past. And I'm like, oh, when's it gonna end? I just wanted to sleep. Like, so anyway, you're up, you get your coffee, and it's pretty okay, like beginning of the day. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anything that we have to really do right in the morning. But then, yeah, obviously 11 or whatever comes round and you start having to do all the prep and yeah, the room before all the drivers are in a room before we walk out and do the stage thing is pretty chilled, honestly. And then you walk out and you're like, oh la la, there's just everywhere you see is just colours. And
people.
loud people. But the thing for me was like where they do their moment of silence, to have that many people just go silent and you can hear a pin drop is quite special. For me, that's more powerful than seeing everyone like at first.
Yeah. Actually, having said that, I mean, we were on the outside of turn 4, but the 2 bits that I remember was the absolute silence, as you say. It's so eerie that so many people could be that quiet. And then when the bloody jets came across, I forgot about that.
Yeah, the flyovers are good. I know Seb Vettel hates his flyovers, but they do it well in America.
Yeah, it was mental. But yeah, I mean, fantastic thing. And it said you started. Excuse me, where are we? Inside of is it inside of row? I can't remember what it was.
It was quite far back. No. First time I was like 18th or 19th or something.
Yeah,
so row 7.
Yeah, row 7. That's it. But yeah, you said you were ahead of Alex. You know, you shared the row with Alex Rossi and Graham Rahal, and immediately behind Pagenaud, Hildebrand, and Connor Daly. I mean, Connor Daly, local hero. I've got his dad coming on next week. That's cool.
Oh yeah.
But that's some good company to be keeping for your first Indy 500. Pretty cool to have those guys around you. Obviously, JR Hildebrand's famous for an unfortunate incident, and I've had him on here, and he's very candid about it. But it must be pretty cool being alongside those guys rolling around to the start. Must have been cool.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I was more
Right, yeah.
like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, okay. Like, how many laps we got before this starts?
Is it 3, 4?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, 1, 2 more. Okay, then you have to do this, and you have to do single file. Like, you're more thinking about that sort of stuff than Muppet Chops, who's next to you, and hope they don't take you out in the first corners. But no, like they're good guys, and they jumped me straight away at the start. But I was more interested in kind of doing my own thing and kind of surviving. So I was like, "You guys do you. I'm just gonna take my time and ease into this."
Yeah.
And in the end, I did ease into it, and then I eased into the wall.
Yes, which I was going to come in. Obviously, I mean, you know, you were running pretty solidly. I mean, obviously, we were out there. There was 4 of us, and we obviously were just out there for a good time. weren't really that bothered who was going to win, but obviously inside we were cheering for you and for Jack and for Stephen Wilson. Obviously, he's officially British. So we were always sort of keeping an eye on you and stuff and watching it. And we were going to get a big Union Jack made, but we thought that's a bit lame. And you were running pretty well, and then obviously, yeah, as you were saying before with the setup and everything, there's just a tiny little difference in the setup or in the wind direction or whatever, and you're around, and all of a sudden we were absolutely gutted, and I'm sure you were. But I mean, what happened? Was it just a bump or getting loose, or?
There's a bump in the entry of turn 2. I think we were at the end of the stint on tyres, no rubber left. Bit of a gust of wind. There's the grandstand opens mid to exit of turn 2, where there's a gap between the grandstand and the turn 2 suites. So I think I just got hit by a bit of wind at the same time of having no tyres, and there was a bit of bump. So maybe the rear of the car's going like that, and just.
Yeah. And the wind was coming up from the south, 1 and 2, so it was coming up towards us.
I think I just circumstantially was not in a good position, and went wrong. I was probably running. I think sometimes the car, especially when it heats up, like on an oval and the sun comes out, it just gets looser and looser. And I probably got to a stage with the tires where it couldn't hold it anymore.
Yeah, and I said when we saw it was you, we were like, no, no, we were proper gutted for you, and
it hurt. I had like 2. One first hit was 84G, and the second hit was 81G to the head. So it was pretty tough.
That is ridiculous. And you damaged your wrist, wasn't it? Was it?
Oh yeah, sorry. I went to protect myself, but imagine I hit obviously the wall so hard that my hand went from here into the side of the tub here. And like snap or pushed the bone into itself, basically. But yeah, then it was quite funny.
Was it Detroit you missed? Wasn't it? Was it Detroit?
Yeah, but that was the next weekend. Like straight away, there was Detroit, and the doctor was like, you could do it. There's just a risk, like that it with the vibrations that something little moves, and then you have a big problem. Yeah. And he's like, I don't advise doing it. But I could grip I could move my hand. So everything was in place, which is why I drove Road America the week after. No, so it was completely like snapped in half with this metatarsal or whatever with a couple of little fragments. But basically they just wanted to make sure that it started to set. And then I was good to go. So I did another X-ray straight after Detroit just to make sure that it hadn't moved. And the doc was like, "Yeah, you're good." And so I drove Road America that weekend. So like within 2 weeks, it hurt.
I would imagine it did. Yeah, especially going. Is it the Kink Road America? That's a rapid bit of circuit. I bet that might have put a bit of pressure on it.
No, it was the bloody curbs. They've got this like old style curbs, which is very
serrated.
Well, no. It's like little humps, but with a hump gap.
Oh,
and I'd go on that, and I'd be like, "Oh, mamma mia!" And then go down the straight and put it back on, and then be like, "Oh, I can't touch another curve again." I finished like 11th in that race, so better than the year after when I wasn't broken hand.
Yes. Just very quickly, I want to go back to the Indy 500 just very quickly because I've got a mate who I know is watching this. A mate of mine who was there, and he's just sent me a message, screenshot of us chatting. And I'm going to just tell a little like a little private little joke that we've got that's going to become very public. So, Dan, if you're watching, sorry, mate. On Carb Day, we met up with Ari Lyndike, Danny Sullivan, and Ari took us into Rinus VK's garage. Just because, I'd had Ari on here 2 years earlier. We've been in touch and whatever.
Yeah.
And he got us into the garages. And we got the photos with the car and everything and all that, and with Rinus and all that kind of stuff. And as we crouched down next to the car for Ari to take a photo, my mate Dan very gently touched the side pod of the car, and I said, "Oh, you touched it. That's it. If anything goes wrong, that's on you now." Just jokingly. And obviously the first guy to crash was Rinus. So we haven't, so obviously it's got nothing to do with it, but we've just been winding him up the whole time. Every time we watch a race, we're going, I see, Rinus would do well because you're nowhere near the car. So there you go, Dan. Everyone knows. Moving on. It was a pretty steady year despite the injury and the results and everything. And came back for a second year last year, 2-car team with the Argentinian fella. Agustin Canapino, and fifth at St. Petersburg, good start, and all kind of going well to begin with. One thing I do want to talk to you about though was that curb at Long Beach. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen on any street circuit ever, because they moved the curb overnight, didn't they?
Yeah. So the way. So the curb itself is like a load of ones about this big drilled into the pavement, and then you've got like a curb and a half of space, and then another curb. And what had happened is we'd done the track walk, and I think all the curbs were there. And then I did the FP1, and I didn't notice at the time, but there wasn't a curb there. So one of the 7 curbs wasn't there. But I was able to take the corner, like I could cut still in track limits, but I could cut the corner a lot. And I was cutting it the year before to a certain amount, but I was able to do it more this year. And it was good, and I was like P2 in that micro sector, so I think everyone else started to look at my line to see how I was doing it. And I went out, and the first lap I missed it, no problem. Second lap pushed, I went, and just the car took off and went in the wall, and I'm like, man. But I mean, I get that the ride height's a bit lower when the tire pressures are cold and all of this sort of stuff, but it doesn't make sense. Like, I'm sorry, I've crashed. What would you want me to say?
Yeah.
And then I started to see on TV that they were saying that the curb moved. I'm like, oh, that's I get there's a miscommunication, but we started FP1 without it, right? So you start driving as if that's normal, and they didn't tell us that it wasn't there.
That's ridiculous.
So because a Porsche GT3 had basically ripped it up before the session before us, and they just didn't communicate that.
Wow.
So I just went to go and do like I expected as soon as you start to push, because in IndyCar, as soon as the tires are warm, you're at 100% and going for it. And I mean, the track didn't end up paying for the damages.
Yeah, I saw that there was a whole hoo-ha about that, wasn't there? But it was going to.
Well, I just made the joke the serious joke where I'm like, look, why should we pay for that?
Yeah.
Well, it's not me paying for it, but I was trying to help someone else out. But
Yeah,
not my problem anymore.
No, absolutely not. Just very quickly, because I'm going to move on very quickly towards the end with questions and stuff. I've got to talk about one of the most famous bits of tarmac in the world is the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. Now, it turned out, unfortunately, to be your last IndyCar race. You took 5th, and it was a brilliant end to the season for us watching. I mean, me and my mates all got together and watched it, and it was fantastic. Absolutely terrific race. And what is it like driving down the corkscrew in an IndyCar? Because it's a hell of a drop, and it's a fantastic bit of circuit to watch. I don't know what it's like to drive.
It's pretty annoying, actually. Yeah, because it's a super difficult braking zone.
It's on the
Because you're
crest.
going, it's on a crest, but it's also not level. So you're kind of like one wheel's higher than the other, and so you kind of got to brake as late as possible, but to a certain point that you then release the brakes to then be able to turn, because there's this kind of hump on the left side that when the wheel goes over, you lose the grip and you kind of understeer over because you lock the wheel. So the braking is difficult, number one, and then it's a very fine margin to get it wrong. Like a lot of guys with the new tarmac were just blowing it because it was so sensitive.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of it, you get a load of wheel spin because it kicks up. So the rear end kind of lifts up and you go, "Roo," and then it's great once you go down it. But the entry in the middle part of it's just a pain. But yeah, it's really steep. Like when we go and do the track walk, we take the golf buggies or whatever. Like you're not stopping. You have to release and tell everyone to hold tight because it won't stop. Like it will just keep rolling down. Yeah.
Jeez. Because it's something like what is it? Like is it a 8 or 9 story drop? Oh, I can't remember what it is.
Well,
It's a heck of a
so
drop, isn't it?
to give you, so what they do when a car breaks down and it still has all four wheels attached, but it just won't go. They tow you to the top of there and take the tow rope off and push you just so it goes over, and you can make it all the way down to the middle of the pit lane from there. Yeah, without any power.
That's ridiculous. Because I mean, it's like towards the end of the lap, but you still got a left and a right, and then a pit lane left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you in any car you can make it into the pit lane.
I feel like I want to get
Even on a golf
there now.
buggy, I can make it into the pit lane without power.
That's unbelievable. I didn't. Wow. I'll have to get the Fiat Panda out. Give it a go. That's incredible. Yeah. So I'm just processing that. Very cool. That's amazing. What a bit of circuit. Yeah. Keith Mann has just said that is mental. Yes, absolutely. Right. I mean, obviously, we all know it didn't end tremendously well with said team. I know you don't want to go into details, and we can't, but did you have any idea that it was going to be your last race and they were going to bring someone else in?
No, not that time. To be honest, like from when it was announced that I wouldn't continue, like I'd say I knew a couple of weeks before that, but to that point, no. Obviously we mutually split. But yeah, I always felt that it was when driver discussions were going on that it was for the other car. And I
Sure.
mean, results wise, I'd come in, help build the team,
Yeah.
and I'd had multiple teams, well, during the year and also the previous year, being interested in me for further years, and I would have felt that I would have been allowed to move on if that was the case,
Sure.
and
Sure.
I ended up being in a situation where there was 1.5 seats left in IndyCar, all in teams that normally need a budget. So it's like, okay, well, that ain't gonna happen. So yeah,
Sure.
gotta look at what else happens. But no, like a Laguna, no. I mean, I didn't understand what like not in terms of the driver side, but even in the race, I didn't even understand what all the drama was about. I was like, yeah. So whatever. It's not my world anymore.
No, fair one. Fair. I just want to say, I mean, there was a lot of very blinkered people saying a lot of very stupid things across social media, and absolutely none of it was warranted.
Yeah,
So I'm
but to
fully
be,
on your side.
I mean, I don't know how many of them will ever see this, but yeah,
We'll
it's just
see.
like everyone thought everything's intentional, like from obviously that side of the world, and I'm like, no, not at all. The reason like I chose to go to the outside instead of dive bombing on the inside was to make sure it was low risk, and I gave the space before, like on the entry. And then the other thing is that my teammate's radio was broadcast, but mine wasn't.
Yeah.
And they had told him that I was what's the word? That I was aware of his situation with Leaders Circle, or I'd been told something, right? I wasn't told anything. I was just told there's this guy in P1, this guy in P2, this guy in P3, and your teammates in P4, you're P5. Restart this lap. So I'm like, sweet, okay, I'm going. There was nothing of anything to be. The only thing was before the race of like, look, just be aware of him. He's obviously got Leaders Circle. So yeah, that's why I didn't understand what the fuss was. But yeah, I mean, I can understand if you just listen to his radio and his onboard that I've been told something.
Yeah.
But
you
yeah,
weren't.
so that.
Wow.
So yeah, that was, and the thing is, he locked the rear brakes under the braking, which has ended up why he hit me. But I mean, aside from all of that, for me, super fast driver. Credit to him. Jumped in it, got on with it. I wish him all the best. I think he's a great driver. So yeah, I don't know what their problem is with me. I think I know a big part of it, but unfortunately I can't control that. But
Yeah, well, they're fiery people, shall we say, from that part of the world.
Right. It's passion. It's passion.
Yeah, passion. But yeah, lots of silly things said, none of it warranted. Amy on Twitter said the team did you dirty and they should have had your back in so many different circumstances. Well, there you go. They've got some support there. Right. So very quickly, yes, new challenge this year, WEC with Jota Sport. Cool, very good team. You're in the same team as a certain world champion, Jensen Button, which is very cool to be alongside. You must be looking forward to it. New challenge, hypercar. The top class, got Le Mans coming up. Pretty good.
Yeah, car looks awesome. Obviously, JB's in the team. Got Will Stevens in my car and Norman Nato. Norman, obviously, in Formula E with Andretti. Will has done multiple years now in LMP2, and yeah, is kind of like the team leader for us and helping both of us settle into the environment. And yeah, car super complex. It's a tough car, Porsche 963, but beautiful looking car. It is fast this year, just won Daytona with Penske. So honestly, I think all things look in the right direction. Jota did a great job end of last year, gained a lot of speed, and the testing over the winter has been very positive. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it like crazy. I think we have a good chance to get quite a few podiums, to even win a couple of races, and if one of those is Le Mans, I think that's life goal achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be very, very cool. And I think just because of the way the series is evolving, the way it's going, it's obviously getting much more traction. It's getting bigger and bigger, and it's after a bit of a dip. And with the team that won it last year, having not done so for a long time, I think there's a lot more interest in it this year. And I think this year is going to really explode even more for the series. And yeah, it's cool to have you and you and Jensen in the same team, and yeah, very cool. So yeah, everyone get supporting Jota Sport. They're the cool gold cars, and give them some support.
Yeah, their cars are very cool looking.
They look absolutely brilliant. I mean,
it's best car I've seen.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it was just a show car, wasn't it? The one at Autosport, but even that looked the absolute nuts.
I'm pretty sure it's a show car, but yeah, I was like, guys, if I get if we are in Le Mans, I'm buying one of these show cars. I've got to get this. Put it in the living room or something.
Yeah. Build an extension or do something. Yeah, get it in there.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I don't know how the hell I get it in there.
Where there's a will, there's a way. When there's a will, there's a way. Amy on Twitter, how do we watch WEC races in the US? I'm not sure. We're in the UK here, so I'm not sure, but we'll have a look and we'll message you.
I can't tell you. I just drive, so I don't know.
Yeah. So Is the gold matching helmet coming along nicely for Callum? Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. Gold helmet.
I'd love to do it. I need to speak to Bell because I haven't actually asked them for a helmet for this year. So yeah, if I speak to them and get one, then I can do it. But otherwise, right now, no. But let's see.
Yeah, fantastic. That's very cool. Well, and obviously wish you all the very, very best for this year. I'm going to be watching very, very carefully. Just very quickly, a couple of questions I forgot to ask them. My apologies. So, is the door still open to IndyCar and things like that in the future?
Yeah, I didn't
If
want to
it came
close
to it.
any doors anywhere. I think Formula One, it's not that the doors close, it's just I think I have to kind of get myself in the market again for that to even be achievable. I think,
Yeah.
you have to be winning IndyCar or multiple races in WEC for anyone to kind of think about it. Um, Never say never, but I mean, Brendan Hartley did it coming back. But no, it's not on the forefront of my mind to go back to F1. I am pretty content either way of building a long career within IndyCar, a long career within WEC. Obviously, immediately it looks like WEC is the way to do it. But again, like I don't want to be closed off to anything, so I just want to go into it open minded and just enjoy. And that's kind of where I want it to take me because, I've got to win some stuff again. I've spent 3 years kind of not in a position really able to do that. And yeah, I got to win. So Jota is going to be the way to start doing that again. I really think that we are going to be able to do it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I look forward to it because it's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Fingers crossed. Max Edmonds, he asked, he said, would Formula E be on the radar? See, a few people have done that, and also that ties into something someone asked right at the very start. Is there anything that you'd like to have a crack at that you haven't done yet? Whether it be, I don't know, NASCAR or supercars or Bathurst or something like that. Is there anything like that?
I think Formula E, I'd give it a go. Yeah, again, it's not something I completely closed off to, but I don't know. It's a bit of a closed circuit in the sense of I have built a bit of an understanding within IndyCar, so I'm not a rookie there. If a team wants me or if there's an opening, it's quite easy to pick up a phone. And I think again that's what happened with Jota because of my GT stuff, that it was very easy to get things going because I wasn't a complete unknown. I'd done a whole year of GT racing, and I think that's what's easy about both those championships for me is that I've done them. And again, obviously more in the future. Whereas Formula E, I haven't, and I think that it's just harder to break into a good environment, or should I say, the best environment without having done it. And I
Right.
think I've done enough years kind of setting myself up in an environment to
Yeah.
not be in a position to take charge of it in a certain way.
Kind of outside it a bit, yeah. Oh, we've
Yeah.
got a couple of people saying the British Touring Car Championship. Woo!
Um,
Hey!
I'm not against it, but at the same time, I just never had an opportunity to do it, if you know what I mean. Like I jumped
Yeah,
straight into the single seater world,
and
blew
then,
straight past even thinking about that because a couple of guys went and did Ginettas and
yeah,
dove off that way. Yeah, I mean, sure. I think I definitely do a couple of guest rounds if I could,
be
to
cool.
have a go in it. But outside of that, I don't think that's the career path for me right now.
Yeah, sure,
It
sure.
doesn't make complete sense right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe later on, we never know.
Yeah, not against it.
Absolutely. Okay, just going to wind down here very, very quickly. Okay, very quick one. I know we can't do it. Andretti. I think everyone thinks they should be allowed in. Just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I don't see any reason for them not to. I mean, I don't know why, or no, sorry, if people have really looked at it. The the companies that are involved in Andretti are massive. Like we're talking, can buy all the F1 teams put together times a few, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm
so,
glad you said that, because I've been in regular contact with Paul Page, the commentator legend, and he knows his stuff. And some of the things that he's told me about Andretti and the setup that they've built and everything there, they could
so
blow anyone out of the water, couldn't they?
well, so the financial side of things, that's even before GM get involved.
Mm.
The financial side of things is not a problem, right? So it's no risk of them coming in and not putting the effort in on that side. Then with GM getting involved, you've got one of the US's biggest, longest standing car manufacturers, with multiple subsidiaries wanting to go into Formula One, whilst trying to expand into America. Bit of a no-brainer. Okay,
It
right,
feels
I
obvious,
see.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Um, but then, I know, I saw a lot of people saying this on Twitter. Well, it's obvious, and and the money side of things the other way around for the others. I get it, but it's like when they speak about TV deals and stuff, and take IndyCar for example, right? I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I wonder if it's worth, uh, in these kind of situations, going like, okay, you know what? We'll sacrifice a little bit of a percentage money wise to get some prime view, uh, TV times, a bit more advertising of our championship on your TV channels, and we make a loss this year or two. Like, not. You have to be realistic, right? Because you don't want to upset the balance, and I don't. That's why I'm not involved in that, and there's probably a lot more people who, on a financial side, who have to take charge of that. But is it the same with Andretti, where you go like, actually, could this benefit the whole thing a lot by bringing GM in, or is it that you want to really stay down to 10 and force people to buy the existing teams
Yeah.
and increase the value of the existing teams? Yeah, I think so. It increases the value of the existing teams. If someone, but my point is that if they had this whole protocol for a team to be accepted into Formula One as an extra entry and could add up to, in total 12 teams, Andretti has everything, right, except the time, because they weren't given, I would say, from knowing when they could and can't, the time
Yeah.
necessary, except the time, because that's impossible. Had everything, and I don't think anyone could have got more than what they did. It's not possible. So I'm like, if they can't, no one can. So it's not
Yeah.
even worth having that as an option for anyone to even pursue.
Exactly. I mean, there's people talking about Penske. I mean, colossal. What's just a massive establishment. And you think, well, if Andretti can't, then Penske can't. You've got no chance in America. I mean, if they can't do it, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, then you'd see
stop.
if it's some kind of political thing against, yeah, but then you're just delving into things that just don't make sense from a from everything. It doesn't make sense to me. But then again, there are people making these decisions for valid reasons, which you may never know. Yeah, we can all sit there and judge, but you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of people with a lot of fingers in a lot of pies that, I wouldn't blame either, because the world's the world.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think, we'd all like to see Andretti or someone else come in, but as you say, if they can't, who can? Okay, last couple of questions. Just wind it down. Some fun ones at the end. Oh, yeah, it's the old boys club. Yes, people have got smells of self-interest. Roger Penske's got the F1 t-shirt, of course. Yeah, done it before. Okay, a couple of little questions here. What's the best racing car you've ever driven?
Are we talking specific team, or are we talking general car to drive?
Just
If I exclude the
any car that you've driven that you think, oh yes,
if I exclude the F1 car, because I don't think that's really a fair thing, I'd say the World Series 3.5 car. I drove that end of 2015 in the test. Great car. Missed that one. I drove a Ferrari FXX, which was quite fun actually. Super great sounding car. Engine was great in that thing, but it's kind of a hybrid race car because it's a bit more road race kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Have you got a favourite circuit that you ever raced on? I mean, Red Bull Ring's got to be up there, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm not. I love the results there, but my three favourites are Silverstone, Suzuka, and Macau.
Ooh, all very different. I'm glad Macau got in there. There's only 2 or 3 people have said Macau, and one of them was Tom Coronel, and he's a lunatic. So if he likes it,
makes sense.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, I mean, you've raced, and this is the impossible question. You've raced against loads and loads and loads of great drivers. I mean, Nick Cassidy, and you got like Kamui Kobayashi, Conway, Buemi, Giovinazzi, Mick Schumacher, Jack Aitken, Marcus Armstrong, the IndyCar guys, McLaughlin, Palou, Herta, Newgarden, Power, Dixon, Jimmy Johnson raced against Jimmy, and Castro Neves, Canan, and Charles Leclerc, Lando, George, all these guys. Is there any that kind of stick in your mind as thinking, good grief, they are good, or they've just got something a little different for whatever reason?
I think there's the obvious ones like Verstappen, Norris. They are top. George, Charles. I have to say, of a standout, Juan Pablo Montoya. So I raced him he did a couple of IndyCars, and that guy, naturally talented, and you hear stories about him, but yeah, like he just gets in it and just goes, and like you can judge what you want, and I understand a couple of people's judgments, but that guy can drive, and for years being out the car to just do what sometimes he does is pretty cool.
Yeah, love that.
I think Kubica for what he can do with how he is, because that's not easy at all. But from the young generation, I think Dan Ticktum's extremely talented.
Saying that with a smirk.
Because I know Dan for so long. I love him because he hasn't changed since he's been 8 years old, and but from I think a global, he's a very good sports in general. I mean, you could make him play rugby or football, and he'd be good at kind of anything. Yeah, so I think he's very naturally talented. But yeah, the guys like Lando and Verstappen, they're just machines. I mean, I would say that I could in F3 with Lando, I was faster in qualifying, but I think globally they just put everything together. Whether it's a bit including media and stuff, it's just they've got it down to a T, and they know who they are, and on track, off track, speed, feedback, all of it.
Yeah, you mentioned the media and the social media stuff. I mean, Nando's got that down, hasn't he? I mean, good idea. Smashed it.
King at that.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I love the mention of Montoya because I'm a big fan of his. Brilliant driver, multi-series. Well, someone just said, glad you said Montoya. What a driver, absolutely. Right, guys. Well, we've actually got a full hour over what we had originally planned. Sorry to have kept you, Callum, but it's flown by at this end at least. But it's been absolutely brilliant speaking with you. Thank you for we had to juggle it around at the last minute and being so flexible. And
no, thank you for being flexible with that.
No, it's all good. No, all good stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Loved speaking with you. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Really appreciate it. I hope we've covered everything for you guys. And just want to wish you all the very best for this season. We'll be keeping an eye on those gold cars with plenty of interest this year.
I appreciate that.
So fingers crossed for a successful year.
Hope everyone had a good, 2 and a bit hours.
It has been. It's flown by, but we always go over the time limit, but why not? We're talking motorsport. It's all good. Thank you very much, everyone. Of course, Callum, thank you. Special thanks to you. And we'll see everyone very, very soon. We'll see you next week on Tuesday. So thanks a lot, guys. Thank you, Callum, as well. And we'll see you all very soon.